بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا مولانا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته ومن اهتدى بهديه ليوم الدين تركنا المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك رب اشرح لي صدري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ثم أما بعد. So I'd like to thank the organizers, both Radical Middle Way and Saada and Inner Dimensions, for this program. It's my second time here in Bolton, I think. And I've been coming to the UK now for over the past decade or so. So not to give away my age, but the first program that I actually participated in, one of the brothers who was the main organizers, see the Asif is here, and that was 2001, I think. So I'm very honored and pleased to be back here again and to see all of these both new and older faces. Not old as in old, but old. Know them from a long time ago, yeah. So the topic for tonight, Seasons of the Heart, this was actually a similar theme that I did in the eastern United States about a month and a half ago, 6 weeks ago. And in it we dealt with some of the current issues people are thinking about. A lot is going on, it seems, around us. Sometimes as a community, collectively, Muslims, we feel we're a little bit under siege, kind of getting it from all different directions, both in the countries that we live in, and then we hear about our loved ones and those we're concerned with in other countries, like in Burma, and Syria, and Iraq, and Palestine, and Afghanistan. And obviously these have a type of effect on us. And also the daily routine, whether you're a student or you work or you do something else, you kind of have a daily routine that you go by, and we kind of wonder, what's it all about at the end of the day? What exactly is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually wants from us? What does He want us to do? And how do we go about doing it? So I think to answer that question, we have to first define who we are exactly. And I mean who we are, I mean in the broader context. Who are you as a human being? What are you? What are we? And if you look to the human being, we're made up of a body, we have flesh, we have bones, we have veins, things that are easily observable, and things that we have in common with other beings, other animals, so to speak. The lions and the tigers and the cows and the sheep and the insects, all of them have this thing called life about them, they're alive. And at the same time, they have this physical form that defines them in a particular context. But the unique thing about the human being is that our physical form is not the only thing that defines us. In fact, it doesn't really define us at all, because our reality is not confined to the physical form. Our reality is much greater than that. Our reality is that which makes us who we are, which is not your physical, it's the inner part of you. Al-Batin, walaysa al-Zahir. Right? Zahir is what you see, and al-Batin is what you don't see, and you can't perceive with your senses. And the ulama have used different terms to describe this particular phenomena, or different words. Sometimes they use the word aql, which means intellect. Sometimes they use the word ruh, which means soul. Sometimes nafs, which means spirit. And sometimes qalb, which means heart. Imam al-Ghazali in his kitab Sharh Ajaib al-Qulub, when he talks about the miraculous and bewildering nature of the human being, and he talks about the hearts, he says that these four terms in a particular context are synonymous. They all mean the same thing. In other words, they all mean who you are, your reality. And that reality can't be seen. And that reality is not your physical form. And that reality existed before your physical form. Right? If you read the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to all of the souls before they actually came manifest, existent in their physical form, He said to them, Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your Lord? And we all collectively said back, Bala. right? And bala in Arabic language means you're answering in affirmative when you have a negative question. So we said, Naam, yes, bala, you are our Lord. Shahidna, we have witnessed this. And the part that did that witnessing is not this. It's not the physical part. It's your reality, the real part of you, which is your soul, your heart, your intellect, whatever you want to call it, using these similar terms. And so when we talk about life and death, right, life and death of the physical form, the more important life and death, at least what we're concerned with right now, is life and death of the heart. إحياء القلب وإماتة القلب. And we find in the Sunan that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the idea of a heart that is alive and a heart that is dead. And he said the heart that is alive is the one that remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that reads Quran. That's a heart that's alive. And the heart that is dead is the one that forgets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Quran also affirms this meaning, this message. نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. They forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so they were made to forget themselves. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. Meaning, they don't even know who they are anymore. And so, if we want to talk about this reality of our heart, just to give a short list, what's important about the heart? Well, if the Quran says يَوْمًا لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, right? And a day that neither your wealth or your progeny, your children, will bring of any benefit to you, except for the one who comes with qalbin salim, who comes with a pure heart, or a heart that's in a state of silim, or safety. Salim. In other words, there's nothing on it that would require it to be taken to task. Right? That means that no one can claim upon you a claim saying, this person has wronged me. That's a salama. Qalbun salim. When the Prophet ﷺ, he said in one of the hadith, المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده, وفي رواية المسلم من سلم الناس من لسانه ويده. The Muslim, the true Muslim is what it meant, is the one who either Muslims are free from his tongue and his hands, in other words, he does them no harm, or people in general, not just Muslims. That's another narration. And the meaning is true, because as Muslims we are bound not to hurt anyone, not to hurt ourselves, nor to hurt anyone else. And this is one of the basic principles of the deen. La darar wa la dirar. Right? There is no darar, there is no harm, and there's no reciprocating harm to someone else. Right? لا تدفع السيئة بالسيئة. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Don't repel a harm with another harm. You repel a harm with a good. فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم. And do not repel the harm with a harm, repel it with a good. And then you will find the one that there's enmity between you. عداوة بينك وبينه عداوة. Enmity, your enemies. كأنه ولي حميم. Then he as a close confidant, as a close friend. But who understands this? وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا. Only those who have patience, forbearance, steadfastness, understand this. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. And only those who have been given a great lot in life. Not money, not cars, not women, not houses. The great lot in life is having this understanding. That you don't repel a sayyi'ah with a sayyi'ah, you don't repel a harm with harm, you repel it with a good. And then you will find that who is your enemy, as if he is a waliyun hamim, as if he is a close confidant of yours. And this can only be perceived by a perceptive heart, by a heart that is imbued with al-basira, right, which means the spiritual vision. Al-basar is the sight of the eyes, the basira is the sight of the heart. And that's what defines you as a human being. So, just looking at the importance of the heart is the one that distinguishes you from all other beings. Right? Your ability to perceive, to rationalize, to understand, to feel, to love. Right? Love is something, in terms of terrestrial beings, that's specific to us. Animals don't really love. They work on instinct. But love that is based upon a true meaning in the heart, that's something only human beings can really have. The terrestrial beings. Of course, the Quran mentions how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yuhibbul muhsinin, He loves those who do good. But when we talk about divine love, it's completely different, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unlike anything of His creation. So I'm talking very specific meaning here when we're talking about love of terrestrial beings, things in the sublunar world and this earth. Human beings, that's something that's unique to them. It is by this also that we are the best of creation. If the Prophet ﷺ is the best of all creation, and this is ijma' al-ulama, all the ulama, the consensus of the ummah, not just the ulama, that the Prophet ﷺ is the best of creation, of all created things. He's greater, he's better than the universe, and he's better than the kursi, and he's better than the arsh, than the throne and the chair of God. The Prophet ﷺ is greater than this, he's better than that. And he's a human being. Yes, he's a human being, but not like us, like a ruby between the rocks, but nevertheless he is a human being. But it's not by the virtue of his physical form that he's the best. It's by virtue of what he is, his reality, his insani al-kamila, right? His complete and perfect archetypal embodiment of humanity. That's what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is. There is no more perfect human being. There will never be a human being better than him, ever. There is no human being that's even close to his humanity. I'm not going to say to his Islam. I'll even say to his humanity, because there should be no contradiction between Islam and humanity, right? How can we be Muslims and at the same time we are not seen as humane people, we're not seen as benevolent people, we're not seen as people that others should benefit from and should be around? There's some type of contradiction. Can't be. It can't be, right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about himself, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful and He loves those things that are beautiful. Then I understand from this, that which is not beautiful, that can't be my deen. That's not my religion. Whether people claim to be it is, or they do certain actions and claim that it is part of the religion, but if it's not beautiful in and of itself, if it doesn't have that capacity, there's no way that can be my religion. There's no way I could follow that. There's no way I can condone this particular thing. Because if the Prophet ﷺ is the best of creation, and obviously by in turn the best of humanity, then all that comes from him, all that he taught, is the best. And that means that I can avail myself of some of that virtue, because he came to teach us, he came to show us, he came to actually help us to live to our potential and to be the best human beings that we can be. And that's by virtue not of his physical form, but by his heart, his reality, his soul, his ruh. It is with the heart that, as I mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ is the best of creation. It is with the heart that one feels sadness, one feels happiness, one feels frustration, one feels joy. It's not your body, right? It's not like your hand is happy, or your foot, or your eyebrows. They express happiness, right? Someone smiles, or that's a manifestation of what's inside, but that's not the object of happiness. What makes you happy, what makes you sad, what controls all of that, that's your heart. Right? And when I mean heart, I don't mean the four-chambered heart in the chest. Right? I mean the heart that has a connection with this, and no one knows the true connection of that. Because when the Prophet ﷺ was asked about it, he said, "Kul ruh min amri rabbi yas'alunaka 'an ar-ruh." They ask you about the ruh, the soul. He say it's a matter of our God, of our Lord. We don't know exactly, but there is some type of connection. But that ruh, right, that spiritual heart, though it's connected to the physical heart, it is not defined by it. It's not defined by it. Because when this body goes, this spiritual heart will still exist. But it will exist in another life, in another way, beginning with Hayat al-Barzakh, in between life, between the day of resurrection and this life, and then al-Hayat al-Ukhrawiyya, al-Abadiyya, and then in the eternal afterlife. It's still you. Who you're going to be in the next life is who you are now. That same consciousness is going to be the same one that you're going to live with for eternity, right? And that defines you. So if all of this importance about this heart, this spiritual heart, in fact who I am, then why would it not be the number one priority in our life, in this short lifespan that we have, right? Because it can make us the best or it can make us the worst. By it we can feel happiness, frustration, joy, and so forth. With it also we can see the inner reality of things and not just the outer. Your eyes, all they can see, is what can be seen physically, but it can't see beyond that, right? If I come into this room and I see this particular setup, I see a table, I see black cloth over the table, I see computers, I see a camera, I see people sitting, sisters in the back, brothers in the front, blue cabinet. That's what my eyes can see. But that doesn't tell me the whole story, right? The whole story is much more than that. The whole story is not just in madahir, it's not just the building from the outside. It's what you actually go in to see inside. Because my inner heart, my spiritual insight tells me, someone put this tablecloth here, and someone had it made so that it says inner dimensions, right, on the front here. And someone set up that camera in a way with the chair so that the chair would be facing the camera. And someone set up the chairs in the manner that they're set up in. They didn't come by itself. And I can tell that this room is also used for other purposes because it looks like people do training here on computers. وهكذا. Your eyes don't tell you that. What tells you that? What do you want to call it? The intellect or the heart or the nafs or the soul? That's what tells you that. That's what makes who you are. That's what's important about this life. And so this will be also, and it is the object of what Allah looks at. القلب محل نظر الله, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look to your forms or your bodies. لا ينظر إلى صوركم ولا أجسادكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم. He looks to your hearts. And so how we will ultimately be judged, the value that we bring to ourselves, to our families, to our societies, it's not what our hands can do per se, or what our eyes, or anything of that, but it's what our hearts can do. That's the value you bring to society. That's the value you bring to life. And so if you have a dead heart, you bring nothing. If you have a heart that's constantly busy with entertaining itself and just consuming and not producing and not putting something out there for people to benefit, then you have no value. You're just a consumer. So here we're trying to set up a little bit the idea of what is the heart. How do we understand what the heart is? And it's also that commander of the ship, that's you, of your body, right? Someone, I moved my hand up and down like this because I wanted to. I have a volition, I have an intention to do so, and it does so. What controls that? My soul, my nafs, my heart makes that happen. It doesn't happen involuntarily. There are some things about me that happen voluntarily. And in those things you find a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? No one controls their heartbeat. I don't have to say, okay, heartbeat now. Okay, beat again. Beat again. Or for the blood to be pumped from the heart to the veins. Or for the signal that when I see something and it's actually upside down, and then my brain reinterprets it right side up. All of that is involuntary. I don't have anything to do with that. That's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you things that you can choose, and He gave you things that you can't choose. And even your choice, when it looks like a choice in reality, is something that it's by Allah's will He gave you that choice, but it's not exactly the same as the involuntary beating of the heart, so that you may know Him, so you may reflect upon this. And so if all of this importance to the heart, then it's the thing that we should be most concerned with. Full stop. Not where the next, when Iron Man 3 is coming out, or when, that's tonight, isn't it?
Last night.
Last night, okay. All right. Or, all the other things that people are concerned with, but it's concerned with what's going to rectify this. And if you rectify this, it's not only going to bring you felicity, sa'ada, in the next life, it'll bring you a type of sa'ada in this life. So if you think about it, what are the things that make people upset or depressed or unhappy? It's not a rhetorical question. I want participation from the audience. So anyone, when you get unhappy, what is it that makes you unhappy?
Illness.
Illness? What else?
Bereavement.
Okay, this brother's very participative, but we want someone else.
Things you can't control, feeling as though things are out of control.
Okay, good.
Finance.
Finance. Okay. Did anyone feel unhappy today? At all? Anything happened today bothered you? No one?
Okay, go for work.
No one in the back? Sisters, everything is okay? Nothing made you unhappy today? Well, actually go now. There's no reason to be here. Everyone is fine. Yeah, is dinner ready? The Quran basically says there's two reasons, there's two types of unhappiness. Right? And it talks about it when it's talking about al-awliya. In other words, those people have overcome the whole idea of unhappiness and happiness. They're beyond that concept. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ لَهُمُ الْبُشْرَى فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وفي الْآخِرَةِ لا تبديل لخلق الله ذلك الفوز العظيم. So, the awliya, well, I don't want to get into awliya right now, but awliya means someone who's reached a particular stage where the idea of happiness, unhappiness is no longer really the frame by which they're operating anymore. It's all about rida now. It's all about them being pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being pleased with them. It's completely different. But what are some of their attributes? لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. They have no fear, nor do they feel sadness. And they said that khawf, wal hazan, or sadness, goes back to two things. Al-ham wal-gham in Arabic. Al-ham wal-gham. Al-ham means that which you're worried about that hasn't actually happened yet. When you have humum, right, you have concerns, and you're worried about, am I going to have enough money at the end of the month to pay the rent, or am I going to be able to pass this exam, or am I going to get that promotion? This is called ham, because you're worried about something that's going to happen in the future, may or may not happen in the future. Al-gham refers to something that kind of already happened, transpired. Or it could sometimes mean what you're in right now, but for our purposes, let's say what's transpired. So something happened, a missed opportunity. If only I had, submitted that report on time, then my boss would have been happy with me and I would have gotten the raise instead of, Fulan, who sits next to me and didn't do anything special. Or if only I didn't make that right turn and then that car wouldn't have come speeding down and wrecked my front, what do you guys call the front part? We have a different word for it. Bumper, yeah. The boots in the back, right? If only I had done this, only I had done that. And so you have this regret, and regret causes you to feel unhappy about something that happened in the past. So really, most of the time, you're really worried about something that happened in the past that's bothering you, or things that are yet to transpire. But are you actually worried about what you're doing right now? Because, as they say, al-insan ibn waqtihi, you are the child of your time. Remember we said the heart is you. That's who you are. How does the heart define itself? It's no coincidence that the heart beats a certain number of beats per minute. Something like between 55 to, 80, 85. Physicians know better than me. Standing heart rate. So it's beating, every second or more, every half second maybe, or every 3/4 of a second. And with every beat is a pump of blood. With every beat is a breath. And that's all you are. You're adad anfas. You're a number of breaths, which will eventually expire. Right? How many breaths are you going to have? How many heartbeats do you have in the day? If you have 60 in the minute, and that's 60 in the hour, that's 3,600 in the hour, times 24, that's 7,200. Let's say 10,000 beats a day. So 10,000 beats times 80 years. How many is that? 800,000. Yes? So your heart's going to beat 800,000 times. Just think about that. If you run a counter, if you lived already 20, 30 years, maybe 40, that's half gone already. So you have 40,000 left if you're 40. Or 50,000 left if you're 30. So write a counter, 50,000 minus. And every day you lose that number. Keep on going. or 500,000 minus. That's it. Adad al-anfas. How many breaths you're going to take. And so you're defined, your most precious commodity, right, to use a modern term, is your time. There's nothing more precious than that. Because once the lahza, once the instant of time goes, it will never come back. And it's irreplaceable. Money can be replaced. House can be replaced. Car can be replaced. A lot of things can be replaced. But time, it cannot be. It's never replaceable. And so, part of the key, I think, to having a solidified and rectified heart and ultimately happiness is to be concerned with what you should be most concerned with right now. What is it that you should be doing right now? And part of the key to unlock what you should be doing right now is the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There was never a wasted moment in his life. You know, that's an often neglected aspect of his life, is that he didn't waste any time. Never. In the Shama'il, Sayyidina Ali, he talks about even the walk of the Prophet ﷺ, how he would walk. And he said, his walk, كَأَنَّ يَنْحَطُّ مِنْ صَبَبٍ, as if he's coming down like a hill. It was so fast. But at the same time, it didn't look like he was moving fast. Like if you looked at his stride, it's not moving fast. It looks like a normal gait, a normal pace. And that's why they said, كَأَنَّ الْأَرْض تَطْوَى لَهُ. It's as if the earth folds for him and moves for him. You know, like in the airport, that moving thing? Not an escalator, but it's we have to, you know, if you're walking normal pace and someone is walking on that other thing next to you, they look like, wow, they're moving very fast. But their gait doesn't look fast. That was the Prophet ﷺ. The earth was moving like that for him. Because he didn't waste an instant. Nothing was wasted. He didn't waste food. He didn't waste time. He didn't waste drink. Nothing. Nothing at all. You can't say, oh, you know, he was wasting his time with that person. Even when he was his muda'aba, right, when he was, you know, joking with the Sahaba and being nice to them, when he said to the brother of Anas ibn Malik, رضي عنهم, يا أبا عمير ماذا حدث بالنغير, or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. You know, a little boy, he's younger than Anas. Anas ibn Malik was young. And he said, oh, Abu Umayr, he gave him like a kunya. He didn't have Umayr, he wasn't married or anything, but he's joking with him. What happened with the Nughayr? With the little bird, the sparrow that he used to play with, because it died. So, was the Prophet ﷺ wasting his time with that little boy, talking to him? Or was he showing us something? Showing us what a human being actually is, what humanity is supposed to be like. That's what he was doing. So, all of our time is important. Every single instant of it. And we live in an age now where we have, I can't say we've never been more distracted. I haven't lived in other ages. I didn't live at the turn of the century or during the Industrial Revolution or any of that. But the general feeling is we live in a very distracted time. There is so much distraction and irrelevance we put up with all the time. Just walk anywhere, walk on the street, sit in a train, at work, see what people talk about, see what they're concerned with, see what they're busy with. It's all irrelevance. It all means nothing. It's not going to affect, at least in a positive way, the heart. So we waste so much of our time. We always complain about, you know, I never have enough time to do anything. Time, you know, the day goes by so fast, I don't get to do anything. And, you know, I really wanted to read the Quran, but, you know, time went by so fast because I so far like this. Time will go by fast if you don't put the barakah in the time. Barakah is not going to just come to you. You have to seek it out. And barakah means literally an-numu wa ziyada. So it means making a lot out of something little. That's barakah. When we say I have barakah in my time is blessed, it means even though it was a small amount of time, I gained so much from it. And so part of the key to happiness is concentrating on those times. And they're very specific times. And even the Prophet ﷺ, he talked about time and he talked about specific times. And he mentioned 3 specific times actually, in one of the hadith, in early hadith of al-Bukhari. And he said that, you know, the deen is too great for someone to do everything that's possible to do in it. So saddidu wa qaribu. So draw near and close and do as much as you can. And then he said, wasta'inu, and seek aid in these 3 particular times. One, the time that is between Fajr and sunrise, al-Ghadat, between Fajr and sunrise, which is a short amount of time. Even in the UK here in this northern longitude, it's still not going to be more than an hour, hour and a half, maximum. And it's a time when people should normally not be so busy. Very few people, I think, actually have to be somewhere at 5 or 6 in the morning. Some people do, but those of us who are not, that's a time. وَالرَّوْحَةِ Wal-Rawha is the time, any time before Maghrib, or the time immediately, sometime after Asr and preceding Maghrib. Also, could be a time, could be half an hour, could be 15 minutes. But there's a special significance to that time, right? And we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put that significance due to the movement of the celestial bodies. So the rising of the sun, the setting of the sun, right? We don't worship the sun or the moon, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put certain ahkam wada'iyah, he's put in certain legal prescriptions dealing with the moving of the celestial bodies, of the moon and the sun. The moon, we know Ramadan. The sun, we know our prayer times. The stars, even, we know direction, and we could also know prayer times. So that significance is there, and he's put a special barakah, blessing, in those two times. And then the third time that he mentioned was وَشَيْءٍ مِنَ الدُّجْلَةِ, something of the night. Of course, the most preferred time is the last third or last sixth of the night, before Fajr, or anything of the night. And night starts with Maghrib. So, to take advantage of that time, even if it's something small. Never belittle time, and never belittle ibadah, and never belittle sadaqah. Things our ulama told us. Don't belittle sadaqah. You only have a quid in your pocket, and you say to yourself, that's not enough to give. What difference is that going to make? It's not about what difference it's going to make. The difference is that you had that khatira, you had that inclination to give it, so you give it. And they say that, generosity is with the first inclination. You tell how someone is generous is when they get that inclination and they immediately give and they don't look back. That's a generous person. But the person who has it in his hand, they're like, I don't know, maybe, let me think about it. We'll see tomorrow. Well, let me see if the bonus comes first, and then I'll get that. First inclination. Don't belittle it, no matter how small you think it is. And don't belittle ibadah, either yours and especially someone else's. Never belittle that, right? Don't say, the teacher, the shaykh was saying pray at night, but I can only read 2 rak'ahs, and I'll read Qul Huwallahu Ahad and Qul A'udhu Rabbil Falaq. That doesn't sound. La, that's great. That's beautiful. Do that. Sayyidah Aisha, she narrated in the Shama'il that the Prophet ﷺ on some nights would read only one ayah the whole night, repeating the same ayah the whole night. So don't belittle that you read only one ayah, or you read a very small surah, or you spend little time, or even 5 minutes, because 5 minutes is better than 0 minutes. Don't belittle the time. Don't belittle the ibadah. Don't belittle the ibadah, the devotion, the prayer of someone else. Right? You see some young brother coming in the masjid and he said, you know what? I saw him last night and he was hanging out on the street corner smoking. Now he thinks he can come here and, come join us in the front row of the masjid. La. What's that? Who does he think he is? I saw what he did outside. You may not say anything, but you're thinking it. And you just thinking that, you belittling him, you're not belittling the person. I hate to tell you what you're actually belittling. You're belittling the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Who is the one who gave him tawfiq? Who is the one who gave him success? Who is the one who guided him to come and want to pray in the masjid with you, in that front row? Then you say, what's that? That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should greet him with open arms. Anyone, I don't care how many tattoos they have or how many earrings they have. If they come into the masjid, you greet them. Because they came there for a reason. They came there looking for something. They didn't come to bother you. They didn't come to, ruin, the atmosphere of the masjid. They came to learn something. The Prophet ﷺ didn't repel anyone from the masjid. Never. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Bedouin would come in and urinate in the masjid. He did not get up and push him away. He waited till he finished and he left, and the Prophet ﷺ took care of it himself. Never repel anyone from the masjid. Never think that this person is not good enough to be here with us. It's not a club. It's the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not your house and it's not your father's house. It's the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone is welcome. Non-Muslims are welcome. Why do you think they're coming in there? They want to know something. They want to learn. They want to see what's going on. We have to be bigger than what we are. Right? If we continue the way we are and we have our sort of closed, narrow-minded look and the way we do things with our deen, that's only going to reflect not just on us, but reflects on the deen itself that we're practicing. People are going to start to think that your representation of Islam is Islam. Who are you to say I represent Islam? And then this is what it is. And if you don't like it, then you don't like Islam. And this is, it's like a plague going on right now in the Muslim Ummah. People who are propping themselves up as representatives of Islam, and people rejecting that representation, not rejecting Islam, and then they're very happy, these representatives, to say, oh, khalas, they don't like Islam. Look at all these people who hate Islam. You know, I hate to break it to you, akhi, but it's not Islam they don't like you. Okay? It's not Islam. It's you they don't like. So don't equate Islam with you, because you're imperfect and you're going to make mistakes. And you better try to catch up with your mistakes before too many people start thinking that what you represent or what you're doing is actually Islam. The Quran talks about the real representatives of Islam. الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. Right? The ones who tread on the earth softly and gently. They don't raise their voice in the masjid. They don't raise their voice in the khutbah. They don't yell at people. They don't threaten people with hellfire. This was none of the uslub. This was not the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so I think a lot of our sadness, a lot of our anxiety is because we look around and obviously we see this and we see the societies that are around us, and they make us anxious, they make us unhappy, because we see people that are not rectifying their hearts, they're not following the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then when we're looking to people who actually follow the deen, we're not so completely satisfied there either. So we feel there's nowhere to turn. What's left? Where do you turn? You turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't put your faith in any one person. Don't put your faith in the masjid. Don't put your faith in the tariqah. Don't put your faith in the madhab. Don't put your faith in any of that stuff. Put your faith in Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلِ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ ذَرْهُمْ فِي خَوْضِهِمْ يَلْعَبُونَ. Say Allah, and then let them in their play do whatever they want to do. فِي خَوْضِهِمْ يَلْعَبُونَ. This adha, right, all of this stuff that we're hearing around us and it's happening all the time, don't think we're unique in history. We're not. In fact, what we're facing now is much less than what the Sahaba faced. Much, much less. They lived the Prophet ﷺ described how they had nothing to eat, and all that they had was something that Sidna Bilal would carry under his arm and hide to bring to the Prophet ﷺ during the boycott of Bani Hashim. That's all they had. So don't think that there are, of course, and here in this country you're doing much better than other people. People in Burma, people in Syria, people in Iraq, in Palestine. Very hard tribulations and trials that they're going through. And it's up to us to actually not just do something for them, but do something for us. Because we can't do anything for them unless we do something for us first. Unless we rectify these hearts, unless we bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't have too much trust in the efficacy of your own actions. Part of our problem is we think, if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, everything on the agenda, then X, Y, and Z will transpire, will take place. And we put the strong effort, then the results will come. Not necessarily. The results will come, and the true result will come if you have a rectified heart. Right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you, that is the result. That's the goal. There's other things that come, He decides. If He decides for it to happen, biha wa ni'mat. If He doesn't, but He's pleased with us, in other words, our wasa'il, our means are actually our ends. To put that effort. Right? As one of my teacher and great ulama, Dr. Sayyid al-Buti, Allah yarhamu, said, he said, you don't have to open the doors, you just have to knock on them. Because you can't open the door. It's not up to you to open the door. Keep knocking. This door doesn't open, keep knocking. Knock on the other one, knock on the one next to it. Knock on all the doors. You don't lose anything, but keep knocking. Make sure your whole life is spent knocking on doors. And then, it's nice when the door opens for you, but if it doesn't, know that the act of knocking on the door itself is actually your goal. The fact that you did that, you were able to knock on the door, you've achieved something. You've actually done what you're supposed to do. Then the results, they come after that. And this was the life of the Sahaba and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Many of the Sahaba really felt they weren't going to win at the Battle of Badr. They weren't sure. If they had lost that, Islam would have been wiped out. And there are other times in history that Islam could have been wiped out. It happened repeatedly. In the 13th century, when the Mongols had overrun Baghdad first, Genghis Khan, and completely incapacitated and destroyed it, and destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate. And now they're marching towards further east, towards Cairo. And this was in shortly after they took Baghdad in 1260 or 1258. And so when they got to Cairo, many people had said, if the Egyptians were to lose this battle, there'd be no more Islam, because there'd be nothing in front of them. They could overrun the whole of Africa and all of Mecca and Medina and the Hijaz. One battle, the battle of Ain Jalut. One battle made the difference. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave them nasr, He gave them success. And only 8 years before that, they had repelled the Crusaders, who also were threatening to wipe out Islam, so to speak. And they also repelled them in the Battle of Mansoura in 1250. So we faced these difficulties before as an ummah. But as individuals, we're going to continue to face them. Right? We're always going to have challenges in our life. We're always going to have difficulties. But the key is rectification of the heart. And I had a lot more to say, actually, but we're kind of running low on time. So what I want to do now, just for the remaining time, is just go through some of the steps we can take to actually how to go about doing that. How do you go about rectifying your heart? We've understood what the heart is. We understood the importance of it. And what are the ramifications if one doesn't have a rectified heart. But what do you do? Well, we mentioned in the beginning about using your time wisely. And that's a general principle. But it's not so easy to implement. But know that what's going to rectify your heart is the same thing that was going to rectify the heart of all the people before us. In essence, the human condition hasn't changed. Don't wait for the new theory, the newfangled diet, or the great discovery someone is going to make, and it'll be the solution to fix, the fix-all for all things. That's what people are waiting for. They're waiting for the perfect diet, for the perfect system educational system, the perfect this, the perfect that, like they're all forthcoming. But the human being is still the human being. And so the sunnah that was used to treat the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and those after them and was successful is the same one that's going to be successful with us. We already have all the answers. The answers are there. We just have to avail ourselves of those answers. And maybe the distractions are many and we kind of lose sight of where the answers are, but nevertheless they're there. And those answers lie with the people who have preserved the answers. That's one of the sunan, one of the unique things about the deen is that its answers, the keys, lie with people more than they lie with lines and books. Lines and books will take you so far, but without the people that really embody those meanings, you won't find it. It'll be very difficult to get to it by yourself. And so our religion is a transmitted religion. It's a transmitted tradition from one generation to the next. Prophet ﷺ alluded to this when he said, لا تزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين على الحق ولا يضرهم من يخذلهم أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, that there will always be a group of people ظاهرين على الحق, who will always be upholding what's true and what's right, and they will not be harmed by those who seek to humiliate them. And so that means that group, however small or large it may be, are the inheritors of that transmitted tradition. And we know the irth, the inheritance of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is this matter, this deen, this knowledge. And so if you want to be part of an inheritor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you don't have to be from his lineage, you don't have to be from Ahlul Bayt, but if you are a Muslim and you seek that inheritance, then you are an inheritor. And so the Muhammadan inheritors, they are the true legacy of this ummah. That's really what it's all about. One of our teachers also, Dr. Mustafa al-Badawi, he said that, people think that the Islamic legacy is all of, I mentioned the two battles that the Muslims had won, that we won, the Muslims had won, and the Ghazawat during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and then the Fatha Constantina, the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans in 1453, and we feel like these are really, big deals, and they are. But to me, all of those things, they were like the capstone. They were just icing on the cake of what already was happening already. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi would have not overcome the Crusaders in Jerusalem. Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih would have not opened Istanbul or Constantinople without them availing themselves of this Muhammadan legacy. And you'll find that actually in those two examples specifically, you had sort of a renaissance of learning and rededication to Islam, specifically the spiritual science of Islam. In the case of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, definitely there was a rededication to Ihya Ulum ad-Din, or the book of Imam al-Ghazali, the revival of the religious sciences. And so those openings, those physical openings, that was the minor story. The major story was these openings, the spiritual openings. Right? We all know Surah Al-Fath in the Quran. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. What's that fath? You think it's Fath Mecca? The conquest of Mecca? It's not. Most of the Mufassirun, most of the exegetes of the Quran said that's not what's meant. It's an opinion, but it's not the strongest opinion. The strongest opinion is the fath that happened after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, when the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was enacted, and then there were supposed to be 10 years of peace, but in fact there were only 2.5 years because the Meccan Quraysh from Mecca broke the treaty, or one of their peace partners broke the treaty. So that fath was the fath of hearts. More people entered into Islam during those 2.5 years than all of the years before that. That was the fath. هذا الفتح المبين. That is the clear victory. Victory is not necessarily, it's not the battlefield, and it's not the back and forth that we have on Twitter or Facebook or all this nonsense. Victory is in here, right? When you can be sabab lil hidayah, you can be a cause for someone knowing, reaching a ma'rifah, a knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no greater victory than that. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, أن يهدي بك رجلا خير لك من حمر النعم أو خير لك من الدنيا وكل ما فيها أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. That someone is led to the deen and you're a cause of it is better than حمر النعم, which were the rare red camels. In fact, the most expensive thing that they have. And another narration, better than the dunya and everything in it. The Prophet, he also said, الدنيا ملعونة ملعون ما فيها إلا من ذاكرة أو ما والاه من عالم ومتعلم. The dunya is accursed, everything in it and what's in it, except for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what follows from that, from a teacher and a student. This is not, some esoteric Sufi saying. This is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that, talking about the dunya in this sense. So what are we wasting our time? What are we waiting for? Right? And that thing is, it's always there. You always can knock. You don't have to take an appointment. Bab al-du'a, bab al-dhikr, right? The door of dua, the door of dhikr, the door of tilawat al-Quran, the door of prayer, the door of fikr, right? Ahmadullah, say alhamdulillah that you can actually think. Because some people don't have that. Some people are so confused, so mushawwash, so screwed up here, they can't think. Alhamdulillah, you have that. You can think, you can see, you can interpret, you can pray, you can make dhikr, you can make dua. No one can stop you from doing that. Even if they pent you up in a small cage, they can't stop you from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter what people do, they can't control this, what's inside. That you control with Allah's will. And so they mentioned that there are certain usul or principles towards rectifying these hearts that are kind of like the agreed upon principles for everyone. And I'll mention a few of them. One of them is to train your physical body in order so that it can be ready for spiritual manifestations, spiritual meanings. And the best tool to do that is fasting and hunger. There is a direct connection between denying the body some of its pleasures and between receiving spiritual openings. They're directly connected. And the Quran affirms this meaning. It's not some goofy Sufi thing. It's in the Quran. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم إيش تتقون. It has been prescribed for you fasting like those before you, so that you may find taqwa. And taqwa is a spiritual state, right? Taqwa means that you leave the haram and you do the halal and you do the wajibat of your own volition. You do them. You want to do them. That's a spiritual state. So siyam, fasting, right? And Ramadan al-Abwab, it's less than 2.5 months, something like that before Ramadan. Rajab is coming and then Sha'ban and then Ramadan. Is one of the means, and that's why 1/12 of our lifetimes, right? Because 12 months in a year, 1 month we're always fasting, which is significant, right? 8.25% of our time we're spending it fasting. And then if you do nawafil, right? If you do fasting besides that, maybe you're spending up to a quarter of your time or a third of your time or less fasting. Some of us. So it's definitely a spiritual technique to open up those meanings, and so fasting is very important. And not just fasting, but also being particularly cognizant of what we put in, what we eat. And I don't just mean eating healthy and apples and pears, and no, not just that. But by what means did we get what we eat? Right? Is our income halal? Is there any shubha? Is there any little bit of doubt that we have coming into it? Because if that doubt is there, and then you buy and you eat from that, then don't expect these great things to happen with your heart, because the heart wants purity, it wants safa, and if it gets something impure, it's very difficult for it to find it after that. So the source of what you use to spend to eat, what you actually eat too, is important, right? The prophets were commanded to eat tayyib, to eat min al-tayyibat. Tayyib means anything that has no harm, and all it is good. How many are the harmful things that we eat? Right? Not just health-wise, but even spiritual-wise. How healthy is it to eat something that someone who doesn't know the meaning of blessing, doesn't know the meaning of barakah, doesn't know the meaning of Bismillah, prepares our food, making a few quid an hour, and they're very upset with their job and some greasy place, and then they put that in front of you and you're supposed to eat that. So even the preparer of the food has a direct effect on the heart itself. Don't discount that. These are things we can't see, but this can see it, and you can feel it. If you get in tune, you'll feel it. It's like, I can't eat that. Where is this prepared? Who prepared it? We eat tayyib. The second principle, they said, is al-uzla, or a type of temporary isolation, or let's say selected isolation. And they said ظاهرا وباطنا. So it could be a physical isolation or an inner isolation. We're trying to cultivate an inner life of the heart here. And when the heart is distracted, it's very difficult to do that, because there's a lot of noise. It can't really concentrate, it can't focus. So part of the way to remedy that is to isolate yourself. Sometimes physically, but not as a permanent state. There's no rahbaniyya fil Islam, there's no monasticism. There's no physical monasticism, but there is a spiritual monasticism, which means you're a monk in your heart, not outside. We don't build temples on the mountains and we completely separate ourselves from society. That wasn't the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But he did on occasion take a retreat from people to regroup, to recharge. We should always have that. Always have a place to regroup and recharge. There should be a place in your house where you live, whether it's a room, a corner of a room, somewhere that's your recharge place, where you can sit down, you can hold your sibha, you can pray, you can read, something like that in your house. A place you can retreat to from all of the noise. And it's a place that shouldn't have distractions like TV and all the internet stuff and all that stuff that distracts people. Have that retreat in your house. Corner that in your house, somewhere that you live. And have that uzla, that type of isolation, and also the inner type of isolation. Don't waste your time with conversations that only waste your time and may even do worse. Because if you're listening to backbiting, you're a sharik, you're a partner. Saying, backbiting other people or speaking ill of other people is haram. But so is listening to it. So if you hear a conversation like this, al-awla bik, right, that what takes precedence is that you try to counsel the people, say, you know what, akhi ala fikra, you're sort of talking about that brother behind his back, and I know you mean well, but it's not right. Maybe we should talk about something else. Khalas. If that doesn't work, then you say, excuse me, but I can't. My akhirah is more important than listening to your conversation. This is your akhirah you're talking about. Don't worry about upsetting them too much, but you give them the nice latif counsel. If they don't accept it, I'm not going to sacrifice my next life because your tongue is running loose. As-samt, the third one, which is speaking only when you need to speak. And I don't know if our ulama knew about the different ways that people speak, that there would come a time when it's not even so much physical speech, but even what people write in chat rooms and on chat boards and on Twitter and on Facebook and stuff like this. But there's a lot of talking either way. And talking doesn't just mean talking with the tongue now. It means any type of communication you put out there. And we live in increasingly narcissistic societies where we always feel we have to offer an opinion. Someone tells you something, and so you have to give your opinion about it somehow. So what do you think about this? The ulama, they had three ways of dealing with passing judgments, whether it's a sharia ruling or something else. They could be in favor of something, yes, or they could be not in favor, no, or they could be neither yes or no. That's a madhab. It's called al-tawaqquf. Yani atawaqqaf. I don't know. It's saying I don't know. Like, for example, the ulama differ about who was the dhabih of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Who was the son that was supposed to be slaughtered? Was it Ibrahim? وَهَذَا قَوْلُ الْجُمْهُورِ. Most of the ulama said that, but it's not consensus by any means. Was it Ishaq alayhi salam, which was the opinion of the Malikis and Imam Malik himself? Or some of them said, the Quran doesn't say which one. Right? And there's no hadith qati'. In other words, there's no hadith that's unequivocal in meaning that points to one or the other. And the Quran only says, إِنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. It says, he says to his son. It doesn't say which son. So they said, أَنَا مَذْهَبِ التَّوَقُّفِ. To say we don't know. We know it's one of the two, but we don't know which. And you leave it at that. You can do that. You can just leave it at that. What do you think about that situation in this particular place? What do you think about those Boston bombers from Chechnya and all that? Is that a conspiracy, or do you think they did it, or what's going on? You ask me, wallahi, I don't know. I don't know. Because if I read just what I see on the websites and the news, it's inconclusive. And the conspiracy stuff people are talking about is also inconclusive to me. So my particular madhab on this issue is I don't know. That's it. You don't have to offer an opinion. You can say this issue, there's not enough to know about it. Don't feel pressure to always have to say something. And it's the safer way to go. Many of the Sahaba, even during the times of fitna, picked this particular way. They said, we're not going to participate because we don't know where the right and the wrong is. There's no absolute right, there's no absolute wrong. There's no absolute black, there's no absolute white. And when you can't tell the difference, that's what we call fitna. Fitna means that al-haq wal-batil laysa bibayin. You can't tell the difference between the two. That's the meaning of fitna. So in times of fitna, to choose one side and you're not sure, just because you're following what everyone else is following, or the popular way, is a dangerous thing to do. The safer thing to do is say, until it becomes clear to me, I don't have an opinion. To say, I don't know. And the ulama, they said, nisful ilm, la adri. Half of knowledge is say, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, someone who says, I don't know, is indicative of how much they actually know. The person who says, I don't know, is more knowledgeable than the person who knows something about everything. Imam al-Sakandari, he says, stay away from people if everything that you ask them, they have an answer for it. Means they really don't know anything. They can answer everything. So samt, or to remain quiet, like as the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيَكُنْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Say something good or don't say anything at all. You want to criticize, you want to point out people's faults. It's probably not a good idea to do it on Facebook, no matter what people tell you about it, or to do it in public. You want to give nasiha to somebody? There's adab, right? There's etiquette to doing that. That's found in the sunnah. And it's most definitely not doing it in public and humiliating people. That's not the sunnah. The sunnah is to do it in a manner that the person can appreciate it. Not that you run your mouth off on the internet or wherever and then, you publicly humiliate them. And then you cause someone from his side to sort of respond back to you, and then someone from your side responds back to them, and then the matter escalates. As-sahr al-dhikr wal-fikr. Here they said literally staying up some time of the night for dhikr and for remembrance, for meditation, for thinking. And there's a secret to the middle of the night. And only the people who've actually spent some time in the middle of the night by themselves know this. No one else knows about it. And there's a certain type of tranquility and peace that you don't find any other time during the day. You take the noisiest, rowdiest city anywhere in the world, but go there like not too late, early, like 2 a.m., but later, like 3, 4 a.m., like the last hour or something before Fajr. They don't stay up that late usually. It's a completely different place. You see things completely differently. As I was coming here, flying to the UK, I left real early, right after Fajr, تقريباً, from Cairo. And Cairo is those of you who've been there know what Cairo, it's like loud city. But as I'm, in the car and we're driving, I'm like, I've never seen Cairo like this before. It seems completely different. It seems tranquil and peaceful. And I can actually think about the Nile and the trees and the palm trees and the birds, and I can hear them. It's a different perception. And so avail yourself of that time if you can, even if every once in a while. And there's a secret to it. And it was the da'b of the Salihin, it was the way of the Salihin to make some use of the night. Some of them to the extent, like they speak about Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam al-A'zam, radiallahu anhu, that he prayed 40 years with the same wudu as Isha and Fajr. In other words, he stayed up all night. Because they knew the secret of the night. So no matter how rowdy and rambunctious and lousy the world seems during the day, it's something different at night. So if you get really munzaj and really upset and everything just seems to be terrible, just go into what we call tajreed. Just like, strip all that away, we'll put all that aside and just look at what the world Allah has given you. And then the fifth, al-dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you read the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Shama'il, you'll find that in every occasion there was something he said. When he put on clothes, when he took off clothes, when he's entering the masjid, when he's leaving the masjid, when he's entering the restroom, when he's leaving the restroom, when before he eats, after he eats. Because all of this is only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, remember we're talking about the heart, it's prone to ghafla, it's prone to forgetting and getting distracted very easily. So you got to keep at it. You got to remind it all the time. And reminding it all the time is using those adhkar that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. And then if you add to this as well what we call a wird, where you have a daily litany, whether it's recited twice in the day or once in the day, something that you may have learned from a shaykh or you learned from a brother or something like that, that's fine. Then and usually they come directly from the Prophet ﷺ. So sabah al-adhkar wal-masa', the remembrance that's during the day and the ones of the evening, to remember these type of adhkar also has an effect on the heart. And it cleanses the heart. Because your nafs, if you don't busy it with good, it will busy you with bad. It can't be idle. Right? No one really sits idle. Right? Even if you're just sitting idle, you're not idle. You're thinking about something. You're doing something. People don't know how to sit anymore by themselves. I challenge you to go to any cafe or any place where people sit and see if they can't just sit there and think, or they're playing with their phone, or they're doing all this sorts of stuff that's keeping them busy because they're afraid of the solitude. But you should find solace in solitude. Solitude is your friend, right? Because solitude, then you know who you really are. Some people never want to be alone because they're afraid they're afraid to find out who they really are. What is it that you do when you're by yourself? If no one else is around to watch, what is it that you do? What keeps you occupied? What keeps you busy? What do you think about when you're alone? This is a true test of who you are, to see who you are. Some people don't want to go to that test. Some people don't want to go through that because they're going to be upset with the results. But if you're really sincere, you got to try yourself. Your inside should be better than your out. Your inner life should be so rich right? And so complex and so beautiful that your outer life, who cares if I got the promotion or I got, a B minus instead of a B, or I got I couldn't get the BM 325i, so I got the Ford Focus. Who cares, right? That stuff doesn't mean anything. What means inside here is the inner life. I got a lot of stuff going on inside of me, right? I pray at night. I see these things. I'm in tune with who I am. I see the Prophet in my dreams sometimes. So I said, I'm not talking about me, but the person who's... that's the type of person you want to be. You want to have this ma'yar. You want to have this criteria, right? When you see things in front of you, you can tell this is beautiful, this is not. Not because of its outside, but because of its inner meaning. Then you really live life. Then you really see things, right? If you just look at the things that they want you to see, their definition of beauty, their definition of happiness, it's depression, right? Those advertisements, women don't look like that. They're not supposed to look like that. It's a facade. No one looks like that. And no one should have to look like that. But these are images that they put out because they can make money from it. And it's an endless cycle, a vicious cycle that goes back and forth. People see this, and I think that's the ideal of happiness, that's the ideal of perfection. So people will spend all sorts of money. Plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery is at an all-time high now because people think that's what's going to bring them happiness. People, when they start to age and get, crow's feet and wrinkles, no, give me Botox or give me this, so I look good, and when I look good, I feel good. What about when you feel good, you look good? That's our motto. When you feel good, you look good. What did they say about the Prophet ﷺ? They said, when you looked at him, it was if the shams yajri fi wajhihi. Abu Hala said that. Sahib al-Hilya, the wasf of the Prophet ﷺ. If you see the Prophet ﷺ, it's like the sun is running in his face. وَوَجْهُ يَتَلَأْلَأُ تَلَأْلَأُ الْقَمَرِ لَيْلَةِ الْبَدْرِ. And the shining of his face, like the shining of the full moon on a full moon night. Which means what? The inside reflected on the outside. That's the secret to beauty. And you'll see it in people. Right? You'll see people, and it's not because they had any procedure done or anything like that. But you say, MashaAllah, hada munawwar. You want to be around that person. You see them and you're like, wow, subhanAllah. Because of the inner strength, the inner light, not the outer stuff. That's like, putting a Band-Aid on something and say, look, it looks nice now. No, you fix it, you treat it. Let it come out. Then the beauty, then the light will shine through. And then finally, how do we go about all of doing this? We need leaders, real leaders. We need murabbiyin, people who nurture people and bring them up to do this. And they have to be sadiq, they have to be completely sincere, they have to be selfless. It's a very hard job, actually. It's not easy because there's no worldly benefit in it for you. And if you think there is, then you're not the right person for it. And so we need senior people, whether they be in the status of the ulama or tullab al-ilm, but they have to be murabbin. They are a murabbi and they treat people and they bring them along, and they're the beacons that help people along, that take them along the way. We can't treat ourselves. Just like the person can't treat, if they have a physical malady, it's very difficult to treat yourself. You need a physician. We need our spiritual physicians. There's not enough of them to go around, and the few that there are, sometimes they're not enough, and sometimes, honestly, they're not that good either. Sometimes they have their own sicknesses that they have to deal with, and that gets in the way of them helping other people. But this is a priority. It's a communal priority that we have to reinvigorate our communities, reinvigorate our societies by having people of knowledge, and not just the knowledge of the tradition, but the knowledge of people, to be amongst the people, to know what the people are going through, to be, amongst the sons and daughters of that particular community. That's important. All that has to happen, I think, for this type of reinvigoration to happen and to bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I believe my time is up, more or less. So I'll stop here, but if people have questions, then we can, if you want to write them down or ask them, it's fine. Fadl Ismail.
Just a question regarding Himma. How does one that tries to, how does one that's on the path that tries to be on this path that you're talking about renew their himma for worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, outward worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
I would refer back to the last thing I said. It's very difficult to have himma by yourself. Some people, there are certain type of personalities that are like self-starters who kind of can do it by themselves, and actually they can thrive sort of like a personal ambition. But there's not too many people like that. So what you need is you need a core group that you guys are helping each other along with. I've lived in many different countries throughout my life, or the past 15, 20 years. And one of the things that I try to always do, wherever place I go, is that I try to organize like a weekly gathering or halaqah, whatever you want to call it, for the people who are local in the community. And so far, alhamdulillah, I've been able to do it in 3 different countries. And even the ones that places that I left, I still continue, and I do it over Skype or something like that. Because I believe it's really important that, you know, you have these people around you who pull you up. They help to pull you up. And if you don't have that, it's very, very difficult. Right? You're not going to fix everything around you, the whole society. But if you can point to 3 or 4 brothers and sisters who are kind of, you know, your group, your people, and they're pulling you up, then that's a lot. And all of us need to have that. Even people who think that they're, you know, real strong and can do all by themselves, it's quite difficult. And we have to be careful not to get into a group mentality, though, too. Never let the group become the objective. You know, and always be open for other people to join you. I never stopped anyone from joining any halaqah I ever taught. I don't care where they came from. Everyone's welcome. Some people would come for a while, leave, some people stay, fine. But there's always that particular core group who remain with you, who stay constant. And those are the ones that, you know, and this has been the sunnah of our ulama from before. I used to attend the durus of the ulama, whether in Syria and Egypt, and you always had like a core group. They weren't that great in number, but they always came. And then there was like an outside periphery of people who would come occasionally, once in a while. But the shaykh would be also, muhtam. He'd be also giving them attention as well. But the ones who are getting more attention, obviously, are the ones who are part of that group. So, we have to have these local efforts, local communities in every English city, or Welsh, or Scottish, wherever it may be. That's important. And it has to be a regular thing, not just when, the faqir, someone who barely knows anything, comes once in a while, or but you guys have your own thing. It could be under the guidance of someone local. Many of the learned ulama you have here in this country could be guiding that, but it has to be a regular thing, I think. Maybe we'll look at some of the written questions. Should we make an effort to take a physical retreat from society monthly or annually? Well, that depends, That depends on where you're at. And for me, I wouldn't mind having a weekend a month. That's kind of away from everything, but it depends on your ability to do so. But make the most out of it. When we have vacation time, I've done the whole sort of vacation at the hotel and the beach, and after the first 10 minutes, you kind of don't want to be there anymore. So it's not really all that it's cracked up to be. So I think we should make more of our so-called vacation time, and we should make them more like spiritual retreats, and they should be organized. There are some that are already going on, like the Rihla program and some of the local efforts with Shaykh Walead Mosaad and others in this country, but they have to be, I think, more regular, more planned, and more accessible. That includes both affordability and also in terms of travel and people having to get there, and it should be open more to families. These type of things should be more of a regular thing. People need to recharge. We live in very oppressive societies, not oppressive in the literal sense, but on the soul, right? The daily grind, in and out. If you work in an office and you sit in a cubicle and you have a computer in front of you for most of your life, like most people, that's going to take a toll on you. And you need to sort of, you need to get out of that once in a while, and you need to start to live a little bit. So yeah, I think it's as much as you can do it, I think it's important. How can we protect our hearts when surrounded by mundane dunya talk at work or school? Well, there's varying levels when we talk about mundane. There's certainly a type that's very harmful, which I don't think I have to go too much into. That we should definitely refrain from being around that. And then there's another type when people are just, we say in America, they're chewing the fat. I don't know what you say here, but, they're just having a conversation and they're just, talking about their day, what they did on the weekend. And that necessarily is not blameworthy in of itself. Prophet ﷺ, they said about him that he would partake in some of these conversations. He would make them feel like he's, he takes care and he's listening. As long as it didn't go into, like I said, something that's like fuhsh, something that's very despicable to speak about or shouldn't be talked about publicly, then those things we don't partake in. But there's nothing wrong with, your co-workers, or if they're talking about, some issue or what they did on the weekend and, what school their children are going to and things like this. Be active members of society. We're not saying that you have to isolate yourself, right, and completely protect yourself because of, the evil people will affect you. That. What's better than this is you be an active member of society and then you use that activism to help them. They're screaming for help. Not their tongues, but their hearts. They're in a complete state of helplessness. They can't help themselves. Right? You're giving them way too much credit and stock when you say, oh, they're going to affect my heart and they're going to make me this, they're going to make me that. They need you. They need your help. Be that example. Right? And being standoffish and being sort of like, you walk into work and they say, hey, Ahmed, how's it going? He's like, okay, I'm all right, thanks. La. Partake. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing great. How about you? What's going on? How's your daughter? I heard she was not feeling well. Keda yani. Be that type of person. Be an active member. Show concern. Not just show it, feel it. They're your fellow human being. Right? That sir that we talked about, that secret of the heart that you've been given, they've been given too. And that day when Allah said to you, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? He said it to them too. And that day when you said yes, they said yes too. Keep that in mind. So don't make them out to be some type of foreign entity here that has nothing completely to do with humanity or life or anything like this. No, they need your help. بَلِّغُ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Convey the message even if it's an ayah. I'm not saying pass out pamphlets. I'm saying embody the prophetic sunnah. Show concern. Be nice. Be humane. How does one put the love and attachment back into worship, i.e. Fard Salah, if one is feeling detached in the heart and lost after hardship, rather than being something done and finished, only out of fear of sinning? I think it says finished. Imam Ibn Ata al-Sakandari, he says, من علامات نقص البصيرة أو من علامات الاعتماد على العمل نقصان الرجاء عند وجود الزلل. من الاعتماد على العمل نقصان الرجاء عند وجود الزلل. From the signs that you are depending upon your own deeds is that when you make a mistake, when you slip, you lose hope. You lose a little bit of hope. Which sounds counterintuitive. Yani, I made a sin, I'm upset. What do you mean? Of course I'm going to lose a little bit of hope. Yeah, the reason you're losing hope is because you're counting on your deeds to prop you up. It's not your deeds that's going to prop you up. Your deeds are what is asked of you. But it's not the reason, it's not the cause that's going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the cause that's going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if all of your i'timad, all of your dependence is upon Him, Azza wa Jal, then when you make a mistake, when you make a slip, that should not be a reason that you lose hope in Allah. Allah's rahmah is so vast, you can't imagine it. It's unimaginable, inconceivable, unfathomable. You don't know how vast it is. He will forgive anything, except shirk. Anything at all. There's no human being who can find that maqam, right? Someone does you harm or does harm to your loved ones, it's very difficult to forgive them. You can't forgive that. I don't think I could forgive that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive that. And so never think that, I'm in a state now where all is lost. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. Right? Do not despair of Allah's mercy. He can forgive all sins. And so when you make a mistake, when you slip, you say, Subhanallah, I made a mistake. But the important thing now is what you do after the mistake. Not necessarily to dwell on it and feel miserable about it, but to say, I'm going to follow this mistake, this sayyah, with al-hasana. Itba' sayyah al-hasana. If you follow a good deed with a bad deed, then the bad deed becomes transformed into a good deed, as if it never happened. That's how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And so, yes, put it behind you, but redouble your effort. Take it as a challenge. So you know what, I made that mistake, but next time it's not going to happen. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be more prepared. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to find that meaning in prayer that's going to help me to do that. And keep your prayer invigorated too. Right? Don't pray with the same surahs all the time. Don't pray with, you have 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 surahs that you've memorized, and every prayer you're using the same ones. Your prayer will begin to feel stale. So it's better to mix it up. Try to memorize some Quran and read that. In the nawafil, it's perfectly legitimate for you to read from the mushaf, outside of the fard. Inside the fard, I would say avoid it. But outside of the fard, it's completely fine to read from the Quran itself. So if you want to pray at night and you want to do like a khatim, want to read the Quran once over, then, dedicate every night. Say each night I'll read 2 pages or 3 or 4, whatever amount you can do. And then you'll find with a matter of months, you've read the Quran once in your prayer. Right? How many of us can say that, not outside of the prayer, but inside of the prayer, I've done a khatim with my own voice and I've read it. That's a major achievement. That's something you strive for. That's something you have to work for. And this will reinvigorate your prayer. Even the dua and the sujood, change it also. Don't do the same dua all the time. Change the dua. Because then it stops being a routine, and then you start thinking about what you're asking for and thinking about what you're looking for. So maybe one last question? How can we keep check of our intentions and make sure we are sincere in what we do? This is not just a lecture, but a series of lectures can be given on this topic. But I'll just really summarize what Imam al-Ghazali said about this. In the Arba'in, he said that there's a difference between intention and motivation. So the intention is that thing where I say, okay, I'm going to go to this lecture tonight because there's a visitor from out of town and I think I'm going to hear some things that are beneficial and I want to go. That's intention. But perhaps your motivation is different. Maybe your motivation is, I heard they're going to serve some really good biryani afterwards. I don't know if that's true or not. No pressure. So you say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go because, the Shaykh is there, I'm going to listen to him. But what's really motivating you? The biryani. How do you know? Imagine there's no biryani. Do you still want to go? Do you still want to go? And you say to yourself, I don't know, Iron Man's out tonight. So make a distinction or try to see the difference between what you call to be your intention and your motivation. And so a sincere person, their intention is in line with their motivation. There's no difference. What motivates them is what they intended. How do you get to that? That's a lifetime of work. How you get to that. There's no easy solution. Being with the Salihin, being with the Murabbi, reading Quran, making dhikr, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it, These are ways that can be done. Training yourself so that, you keep yourself out of a situation where people can praise you because of what you do. So try to make what you do in secret or what you do by yourself privately more than what you do publicly. So strive that your inner life is much more rich than your outer life. What people see, make it only the tip of the iceberg. But what's actually going on is everything that's underneath they can't see. And that's better than the other way around. Right? They see all of this stuff that you're doing outside, but in your house, you're kicking back and playing PS3 or... No, you make your sarira khayrun min al-alaniyah. Make your inner life more important, more rich, more beneficial, more impressive, because who are you pressing? You're pressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your outer life. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. You want me to take this? I think it's the same question that we answered. So we'll stop here with dua. Inshallah, nas'al subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wa salatu wassalam ala sayyidil mursalin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم أجرنا من النار ومن خزي النار ومن عمل يقربنا إلى النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار رب اغفر وارحم وتجاوز عما تعلم إنك أنت الأعز الأكرم وما آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم إنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك اللهم فرج على المسلمين في كل مكان في الشام وفي فلسطين وفي العراق وفي مصر وفي ليبيا وفي تونس وفي العراق وفي بورما وفي أفغانستان وفي سائر بلدان المسلمين افتح لنا فتوح العارفين بك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا واهدنا السبل والصواب يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم زدنا علما وحقنا بالصالحين اللهم زدنا علما وحقنا بالصالحين اللهم زدنا علما وحقنا بالصالحين اللهم اجعل آخر كلمة في الدنيا لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم متحققين بمعنى محسن ومعنى ظاهرا وباطنا وإلى حضرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة